Tango Tango Papa 2125, October 29, 2023.
Have we seen the actual reality of a monstrous crime? Or merely an illusion, the product of a tortured brain?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Tom Wiles here with you, coming to you from home. So I got home, it was like 3 o'clock, 3:30, 3 o'clock Sunday, or Thursday. I think it was Thursday morning. And so I've got, today was Sunday. It's kind of later in the evening now. So I have Monday and Tuesday, and then I have to go back to work on Wednesday. So Monday, let's see, Friday. Get the days all mixed up. Friday, we were still pretty warm. It was like up to like 76, 78 degrees until about 1 o'clock, and then it started cooling off, and it rained somewhat, and it rained kind of mostly light rain all day yesterday, and then it rained again today, kind of mostly light, except there was one period where I guess a cold front, because it had already cooled off, but this other cold front came through, and it rained pretty heavily for a while. And then it, it's probably drizzling right now. I'm not exactly sure, but it's supposed to get down to a low of 27 tonight, and then over the next few days, it'll warm up, maybe into the 50s, and then maybe by the end of the week, like 65, and then, but be cold at night. So, and then I think tomorrow is actually supposed to be sunny, or at least partly cloudy. So air will still be cold, but it'll be, the sun will be out. So, but at the moment, it's a little chilly. It's really wet, and I think it's actually a little bit foggy too. I haven't been outside now. I got home, I went to town earlier. I met one of my younger brothers and his wife for lunch, and then I came back home, and I haven't really been outside since then, so. But I do think that it's still kind of cold and drizzly, and at one point it seemed like there was a little bit of wind because, I could see the, leaves and branches kind of moving around a little bit. So I think it probably is raining right now, but, I'm inside, and it's warm. So it's been a little over a month since the last podcast. So nothing really out of the ordinary has happened. I'm just going to do it. This past time I was out in the truck, it's kind of the typical stuff, except the mix of loads. It seems like there's a lot of, kind of like overnight type loads. And there are always those sorts of loads. There's some drivers that want long haul loads, and they just want long haul loads only. Well, that's not the real mix of loads. There's going to be some that are longer, but there's going to be a whole lot of them that are, let's say 600 miles or less, which that's, like 500 miles or whatever. That's usually like an overnight type thing. And so the problem with that is that, I've ended up with differing loading and delivery appointments, so that I end up having to kind of keep switching my hours around, and then a lot of those loads pick up and then deliver in areas where there are no truck stops, and then of course a lot of the shippers and receivers don't have overnight parking, and so then I've got to be very careful and kind of creative about where I'm going to park at, and so I don't know. And the other thing, there's always road construction, and then driving at night in road construction can kind of suck because sometimes the lanes are really narrow, and then if you throw in it's at night, and then you throw in some sort of rain or something, and then it becomes that much more, that much worse. So. And you got people that if it's, let's say there's 2 lanes going through road construction, well, you always have the people that, they can't go the speed limit. They've got to zip right on through the road construction. And so that, and if you got narrow lanes on top of that, then it's, I don't know, it can be kind of dislikable. So I don't know. I still am I really do think I'm going to retire. I'm still thinking March or April. So as I've said before, in January I am, after January 1st, I am going to go ahead and sign up for the Medicare, and then once the Medicare's kind of in place, then at that point, whenever I do quit my job and the health care ends, the employer provided health care ends, then it will be I've already got the Medicare in place. Now, I really don't plan on using the Medicare any more than I've made use of the employer-provided health care. The employer-provided health care, I've made very minimal use of that at any point, and I really don't plan on making much, any use or much use of the Medicare at all, unless I just, unless there's, it gets to a case where it's, kind of have to, but so we'll see. But don't really plan on using it. I know some people. I've got this aunt. It's my dad's youngest sister, and she kind of knows it herself. She's a hypochondriac, and she's constantly going to the doctor. It's like every week it's something, and I don't know. She does have medical problems. She has had some legitimate problems, but there's a lot of the stuff that's just, that's obvious to me. It's just kind of psychosomatic, but I really do think that if your attitude really can, you can have physical problems, but your attitude can really either make those physical problems worse or eliminate a lot of them. Maybe not all of them, but your attitude really does end up figuring into that. So you got to have a good attitude, regardless of, and nothing's going to be perfect. You can't just expect, well, if I have the right attitude, then everything's going to be perfect. I'm going to, and it just doesn't work that way. There's always going to be issues and problems, and then it's up, to you to develop and continue to have the right attitude in order to be able to deal with situations. So, but anyway, I've got a couple of voice files from Joel that I'm going to be kind of playing. Now, Joel sent these right after I put up the last podcast. So I've been, I've had these files now for about a month. Sorry about that, Joel. Just kind of been meaning to record a podcast, but I just never have gotten around to it. So here I am. So now I was, before I get into playing Joel's files, I was on the phone with my youngest brother earlier this afternoon, and we were, if you have a conversation with me, it's going to end up probably veering into the stuff that I love to talk about. And I don't remember exactly how the conversation meandered into the topic, but I started talking about, what, it seems like of course, it seems like the world has kind of gone crazy, or than it was, because it was already kind of crazy, obviously. Seems like it's gotten worse, and it's always getting worse. It seems, and I've said for a long time it's going to get, it's going to continue to get worse. But the thing that really drives that, the thing that, like these school shooters, or not school shooters, but these, there's been a couple of, recently there's been, these mass shootings or whatever, like up in Maine, and then I just saw a thing earlier. There was one down in the Tampa Bay area, Florida. And, what drives people to do that? And I really do believe that it kind of goes back to people, human beings have to search, we have to find meaning. The meaning generally doesn't seem to be provided for us. Now, if you have let's say you have a stable society, a really stable one, and like the Amish, for example. The Amish are a great example of a pretty stable society. They're very stable. And so they've got different systems that have been worked out so that when they raise their children, they have children, they raise their children, and the children are kind of given a clear path choice, and it is a choice. They're not forced. With the thing with the Amish, they don't force their children to join the church. The children get to a certain to a certain age, and at some point they're given the choice. You join the church, or you can just go out into the world and be part of the greater so-called English world, as far as the Amish that are here in the United States. So they're given a choice, and so when they're teenagers, the teenagers may buy cars and do all kinds of crazy things. They're sowing their wild oats, and they even call it that. But then they're given the choice to either, go off into the world, or then they can, join the church and then become Amish and join kind of become part of the Amish community and live a strictly kind of Amish lifestyle. And that's always based on the local church, because different communities have, kind of can do different things or whatever, or have to conform to different rules. And they have a very high percentage rate of people deciding that they're going to go ahead and join the church and continue to be Amish, even though they do have some dropouts. But they have a very high percentage of people that actually make the choice to be Amish, to join the church. So, but in that case, they're sort of given, this is a choice, they're presented with this choice, and it's really a choice of meaning. And it's sort of set up so that this is what we've decided is meaningful, and you can either choose this, or if you think it's going to be more meaningful to just go out into the greater world, then go out into, you're free to go. But they have a really pretty good structure that's set up, that's well defined. But, if you're not Amish, then, and you're just part of the greater society, then there's been all kinds of distracting forces that have worked through various very disruptive vectors that have really worked to destroy any sense of here's your choice for a path forward. The children are told, oh, you can be anything that you want to be. All you have to do will pressure you into going to college, and then you can, then there's this vague idea that they're going to they'll get this cushy job that's going to pay them lots of money, and they're just going to automatically be successful. And I think a lot of people that fall into that trap, I think a lot of people fall into the trap anyway of thinking that if they do that, then they'll be happy somehow. But really what human beings, if you really think about it, we're looking for meaning. And we have to, even if you're Amish, you've got to find meaning. It doesn't matter, whether you got some sort of a structure that's been kind of laid down for you that you can easily move into, sort of as a life's path, you've still got to find meaning. And so there's a lot of people that have kind of, in a greater society, that have sort of been deprived of meaning, and then there's all these distractions, and the one thing, the one thing that always improves is knowledge, and then technical knowledge and technology, and the big part of that always improves is communication. And so we've got our communication over my lifetime has really made dramatic strides forward. It used to be you could go back into the 1980s and, you'd have people that were writing letters, so you'd write your letter and then you'd mail it to your friend or your relative. And so you'd mail your letter, send it to your friend or relative, excuse me, and then they would maybe take a few days to kind of read your letter and then respond back to it, and then they would go to the post office and mail you a letter back. So it might be a couple of weeks. Back in the 80s, the trucking companies, which I was, working for a trucking company back then, they had the idea that, they had the billing, and so they would, the load would get hauled, and then, the paperwork would the driver would actually have to mail it in, send it in, and then they had women, it was mostly women, or it was all women actually in the billing department that would fill out, they'd, do whatever they had to do in order to, bill these, the shippers so that they could get paid. And so there was always a kind of a delay. So they would always try to get paid as soon as they could. Well, what happened? Eventually it all became electronic, and this stuff just happens like that. So it's, the load gets hauled, and then, the company gets paid immediately for it. There's very little delay. So, and that's all well and good, but then, the problem, every tool, And that's really what we're talking about. Technology is a tool. All this advanced communication that we have, the sped up communication, is a tool. But at the same time, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, and so it has really positive aspects to it, but it's also can have some really negative aspects to it. And so one of the problems is, there's nothing really wrong with the concept of entertainment, but then you can use that as a distraction. So you can just kind of lose yourself in all kinds of games and what have you, and endless. There's just endless entertainment now on the internet. That's just you can't physically, you can't watch all of it. You don't have long enough life to watch all of this entertainment that we have now. But what drives people, there's some element, like a basic element that's present in human beings. We're looking for meaning. Now, the other thing to kind of keep in mind, as a conscious creature, the thing, and you've heard me say this before, the thing that we're most intimate with, if you think about it, the thing that we are most intimate with is something called conscience. And so there's this constant struggle going on. What's the right thing to do? Am I right? Am I wrong? In the present moment, is this behavior right? Is it wrong? So there's this constant sort of wrestling, is one way to put it, that goes on. Now it's really interesting. The word Israel literally means those who wrestle with God. Those who wrestle with God. That's what Israel means. So conscience, I really believe, and you've heard me say this before, I really believe conscience is God talking to us. Now, you can think of it, I've said before, it's sort of like you can think of, there's sort of like this ideal blueprint, but then, you can have the concept of the perfect circle. And so conceptually, the circle can be perfect, but in the physical world, no matter how precisely you machine, let's say, some sort of a circular object, it's never going to be perfect. You get down to the molecular level, and it's not going to be a perfect circle. It can't be. It's not physically possible for it to be perfect. So we wrestle, or we struggle with, but we actually wrestle with our conscience. Now there are Bible stories where, I forget which Bible, one of the characters in the Bible story actually wrestled with God physically. And he sort of got God to change his mind, but he also ended up with a broken hip. So it is possible to sort of, negotiate with your conscience. That'd be another way of putting it. You can negotiate with your conscience. And that is part of being a conscious, a conscious entity, is that we have this conscience. And so the problem is it's necessary to be friends with your conscience. If you really want to find meaning, if you really want to have a meaningful existence, it is absolutely necessary that you be friends with your conscience, and that means that you can't be enemies with it. You cannot be enemies with it. It's kind of like, if you're healthy, you don't know it, and until you become ill or you break a bone or whatever, and then you find out, that's what health was, because I'd like to get back to it. Same way with, happiness. People think they want to be happy. That's not some, like high emotion or whatever, some thrill. It's not that. It's like you don't know that you're happy until the happiness is taken away. So, but you need to have some kind of meaning, and that means that you need to be friends with your conscience. And so being friends with your conscience doesn't, what it really means is that, you can, if you have a kind of a gut feeling, you can actually listen to that gut feeling. That's one thing. And it also means that it's not going to be just, it's not, it's kind of like, if you're healthy and you sort of don't, it's not a feeling. Being happy is really not a feeling. Being friends with your conscience really isn't a feeling. It's just, you don't have a guilty conscience. And so there's nothing that's gnawing at you. And if you can really be friends with your conscience, then and like I say, it'll sort of nudge you in the right direction. And you're not arguing with it, and you're not trying to find something to distract yourself with. It's because I think that's really what forces a lot of people into distracting themselves, is that they've got a guilty conscience for whatever reason. And they'll even deny that they have a guilty conscience, or they think the conscience is some sort of a construct of society or whatever, but they've got this guilty conscience. So then, and they're running away. They'll distract themselves with there's all these things that lend themselves to distraction. And in the meantime, their conscience, they've got this guiltier and guiltier and guiltier conscience that they're trying to escape from. And at some point, and of course they resent it, and then at some point you have some of them that get to the point where they hate the world, they hate other people that appear to be happy, that appear to enjoy existence. They hate those people because it reminds them that they're miserable. So they want to, they want to take out as many people as they can before they kill themselves. And this has happened over and over again. It's an old story. Murder-suicide. But it all goes back to, you're driven, as a human being, you're driven to find meaning. And the meaning really isn't going to be found outside of you. It's an internal thing, and it really revolves around seriously facing your conscience, and just allow your conscience to catch up with you. If you can really do that, honestly do that, allow that conscience to catch up with you, and you really just sit and listen to it without resenting it, because that's one of the worst mistakes you can make, is resenting your conscience. If you can really do that, then the stuff becomes resolved, and then it's over with, and then you can just kind of happily move forward. It really is an amazing thing. And it may be something, it's not going to be something probably for most people that's going to happen instantly. But it requires a change of your own attitude. And whenever your conscience brings something up, and it'll sneak up on you. If you suddenly find yourself thinking about something that, and it kind of bothers you, and you think, oh, I need to distract myself, that's the time right there to really, ask yourself the question, well, what did I do wrong? How could I have handled this situation better? What was my part? What was my part in doing, in doing the wrong? Because obviously your conscience, if you feel guilty about something, you obviously did something wrong, or otherwise you wouldn't. If it was all just innocent whatever, then it was just innocent whatever. But if you did something wrong, then your conscience is going to be bothering you. And it's not a societal construct. But another way of putting this is that meaning, people that don't have meaning, that become resentful, are there's this idea of persecution of the innocent. Why would people want to persecute the innocent? Because the innocent remind them of their own guilt. And then they think these innocent people, they're the ones that are making me feel guilty. These people that, they're the ones that are making me feel guilty. Therefore, if it weren't for them, if they didn't exist, if I could just purge them from existence, then I'd be able to just do whatever I want and not feel guilty about it. And there's this idea you could just do whatever you want and you're going to be happy. And it just doesn't work that way, because if you violate your conscience, it makes you worse. You're the one that's getting worse. However you're violating it, whatever you're doing wrong, whatever it is you've done wrong, you were the one that violated your conscience, and so therefore it made you worse. And you know it. And it's not somebody else's fault. It's your own fault. And we do that via resentment. Usually starts out with people resenting their parents, because those are usually the first people that fail you as a child. Resent your parents, and then and they're resentable. And none of the parents are perfect. The parents are resentable, and then and if they fail to mature, people fail to mature. Because part of maturity is learning to kind of face your conscience, really. If you've never matured, then you just resent this and resent that, and before you know it, you're resenting everything. And you're miserable. Resentment cuts you off from who you could have been. It gives you two wrong choices. You either go along to get along, or you try to rebel and you do the opposite. But either way, you've lost the connection to the original identity that you could have had you not been enemies with your conscience, because resentment also makes you an enemy of your conscience. So, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and play Joel's the first file that he sent. So, here is Joel.
Hey, Tom. Joel McLaughlin here. Listening to your last show. In here you talking about retirement. That's kind of something I started to think about here and there. I'm only 52 right now, so I'm at least, I would say probably 15 years from retirement, but it's something I have been thinking about. Kind of one thing not going in my favor is stuff that I've done in the past. Namely, when I was working, it was the right decision at the time. But when I was working at the college, which I think that was the last and only time we met in person. But when I worked there, since that was a state-run college, the whole time I was there, because they have the school employee retirement system, the whole time I was there, I was paying into that versus paying into Social Security. I didn't have to pay Social Security when I was working there. So that's one. And I've already come to the conclusion that I can't count on Social Security, because our government likes to spend so much money. But so that's one thing that's not really going in my favor here. And then the other is the fact that I cashed out of that about a year or so after I had left the college and moved to my current company. I don't say current job because I've had like 3 since I've been there. So, but that was a mistake too. I cashed all the money I had in school employee retirement system out, which is roughly $90,000, I think, at the time. I have a lot more at the new company already, but I kept 40 grand of it. Now we ended up getting nailed on taxes. That's okay. I knew that was going to happen. And we're past that. So, but the rest of it I put into an IRA account. Now I have 401k at my current job. They do some matching here and there, and it's it's all going to be dependent on how well the stock market does. If we have some good years, which right now, not really thinking we're having some good years. But once we do, then I think maybe I can retire about when I want to, I think. I don't know. It depends. So, but I still like what I do, but I don't like it as much, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's just me getting older. But so that's one thing I'm talking about. The other is customer service, and kind of your experience you had at the scale is highlights customer service and kind of how bad it is in our country. She had the ability to go look on the computer and see your full physical, but just didn't, or when she did, she only looked for the things that she was looking for, and that's it. So I have currently, will not have very shortly. I've paid into this plan for fixing stuff around the house because I don't like fixing washers and dryers and stuff like that, and air conditioning, Back in August 23rd to be exact, our front load washer started to spurt water, out through the soap dispenser. So I called them, assuming that I wasn't going to have to pay anything, and they said, well, it wasn't covered. So I'm like, okay, well, I just want to pay and get it fixed. All right. So I did that. The guy came yesterday. Well, the parts, there was a whole saga on the parts. All right. We only got one part to begin with, and he needed at least 2. All right. So that was one customer service fail. They sent the wrong part. The next was they came out yesterday. Well, not only did they send the wrong part, but they also sent the part that they did send. If he wanted to put that part in to our washer, it was still the wrong part. So he says, well, we got to order the other part, and then I'll be back once you get that part. All right. Okay. That's a huge customer service fail. Then this morning, I woke up and I got an email that says, the quote for your repair is another $362. I'm like, hold the phone, dude. I already paid and you never fixed it. So I'm going to be making, after my call this morning, I'm going to be making a call to our to that company and say, what's the deal and how fast can you get it? And here it is, it's September 15th, and my washer's been down since August 23rd. And I'll say this, with washers and dryers and most appliances that we have now, if you buy new, they're definitely not made how they were back in the night, even in the 90s. In the 90s, you can buy one and you can use that washer dryer pair. We had one that we used for 15 years before it even started having problems. So, granted, some of this is we had to buy towards the tail end of the pandemic and the supply thing, but it's like they just don't make them like they used to. Word has it, though, I was talking with one of my friends at work on Slack, and he said that he heard that Speed Queen is the brand to buy. There's no computer in it. There's no, it's not as high tech as the other stuff, but they work for a long time. And they're also very expensive. I think my wife looked at it and now granted, I don't know what she was looking at, but she said it was $2,000 just for the washer. And I'm like, oof. But
Okay, let me interrupt. Actually, I have a Speed Queen washer that I bought several years ago. You may remember me talking about it. I think maybe 2015, I don't remember. In any case, I deliberately got the one, it's just it's conventional top load model. It's basically commercial version, except, the Speed Queens are, basically they do sell to consumers. So this is basically the same type of thing that a commercial laundromat would buy. And they're very well put together, very, super reliable. They've got a really long warranty. And the thing does a superb job. I made sure that I got the version that has the mechanical timer. That's what I wanted. I wanted the one with the mechanical timer, and it's top load, and the thing does a fantastic job. Now, when I bought that, it was like $600. And then they also had a top load version that had a digital control thing, and I wanted the mechanical timer. Why do something digital if there's if you can make some, like a tried and true mechanical timer, with the sort of electromechanical functionality, as long as that's tried and true, then there's really no point in having the digital controls. Where you got the kind of a touch, like surface mount touch electronics. That just, there's room for that. Of course, we all have that type of stuff, but there's really no point in it if you can do the same thing with a mechanical timer. So, and I haven't priced Speed Queens. Now, if you're looking for, Speed Queen does make front-loading machines, and I know that's kind of been the big fad for the past number of years, is the front-loading machines. So those probably are more expensive. And I know that's, for some reason, people think that the front loads are more desirable or whatever. Maybe they are, I don't know, but I've been perfectly happy with the top load machine, and as far as I know, they're still, they're still around. They're probably, maybe $600-700. I don't know what's happened with inflation with them, but the top loaders are going to be cheaper than the front loads. But but I can say that the Speed Queen that I have is just, it's been superb. I love that machine. Typically whenever I come home, I'll do 3 or 4 loads of laundry, and I carry enough clothing with me that I never have to go to a truck stop laundromat, because that's its own nightmare. So I, I've got a large laundry bag, and kind of a netted laundry bag that I put my dirty clothes in and bring it home and dump it out and sort it. And like I say, I'll usually have 3 to 4 loads each time I'm home, and then take the clothing back out to the truck and start over again. So anyway, let's go on.
Now, my opinion, what I would have done, if it wasn't just me in the house, is I'd just buy a new washer. I don't care if it matches the other one. Buy it, throw it on the platform. We're good to go, But the wife is like, no, it has to be matching. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So that's what happened when the dryer went out. Like a year or so after we first went in. That one was significantly older than the pair we have now. But anyway, everything just seems to be horrible with regards to customer service, and and I hear the president saying, "Oh, the economy's good." I'm like, in your dreamland, maybe, but
Thank you, Joel. I had myself muted there. So let's, of course you can't, whatever the resident says, I keep all that stuff shut off because it's all propaganda, and it's all designed to kind of keep people sort of locked into their brainwashing. So it's best just to shut all that stuff off. Okay, so we got another file here from Joel. So once again, here's Joel.
Hey, Tom. It's Joel McLaughlin here. Thought I'd check in with you, make sure you're doing all right. I'm sure you are, but I'm heading back home from church after getting my Tabata exercise in. Good night. Last week, though, I was in Virginia, and there for a work thing. And I just started thinking about how we have different, like we have our family, which, family by blood. And we have other communities or families, if you will. And I was thinking about like last week I got to spend some time with people that, I'm going to be honest, I've actually known probably for almost 20 years. Because I've worked since '03 with Colleague, which is the name of the product that I work on, for colleges. So it was real nice to see with them, and it just drives home to me how the COVID years was really a bad time in the world. Not saying we're even through. I think we're moved on to the next bad time. But just being able to spend time with those of like minds for different reasons, either your family or like tonight, my church family. It just drives home how important those things are. Yeah, and those are it's not all the things you do with those people, it's the relationships you build. Here I'm sitting here in a car in Ohio talking to a trucker whom I've only met in person like one time, I think.
Twice.
But I consider you a friend. And if you're ever in Ohio again, of course, we'll have to get together sometime, go out to dinner. But the whole thing, though, is that there just seems to be something in this world, I want to say the devil, that's trying to keep you away from this. from away from building communities, building relationships, and that it could be a politician, could be the actual devil, whatever. It just seems like to me that there's something going on in this world that's trying to force people apart.
Okay, well, let me interrupt. Yeah, you could say that, and you could. It's a sort of a spirit, but and it's easy to say, well, it's in a politician, and yeah, it probably it is in politicians, but maybe the thing that we fail to recognize, it's in us too. The line between good and evil runs right through every human heart. Every single one of us has the potential for good and the potential for evil, and thus what I was talking about in the beginning. We have a conscience, and this conscience, we're struggling between what is right and what is wrong. What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do in the present moment? And the problem is that wrong can look right, and right can look wrong, and that all kind of depends on if we've sort of embraced the wrong side of our ego, because we all have a wrong side of our ego. And, so you kind of embrace, you do what's wrong, you kind of listen to the devil's spirit, and you sort of do the wrong thing, and then your conscience comes along and tells you you were wrong, and you think, oh my God, that guilty conscience, I'm going to, distract myself or find someone that I can convince that wrong is right and right's wrong. Of course, the example, I like to make extreme examples to illustrate the principle. Let's say you're a female and you've had an abortion. Someone, talked you into an abortion, and they, told you, oh, maybe you think that you actually did a good thing by aborting, killing your baby. But the problem is you killed your baby. And it doesn't matter whether society says that it's an okay thing to do to kill your child. It's obviously not an okay thing to kill your child, whether it's inside the womb and you can't see it, or it's outside the womb and you can see it. You killed your child. You killed your child. And so what are you going to do then? You got this conscience that's can you imagine a conscience that would come along if you killed your own child? Could you imagine the conscience? It would be one thing, like let's say, if God forbid that you accidentally backed over your own child, and it was an accident. You'd still feel guilty. Imagine that you deliberately caused it to happen, via an abortion. Just imagine the kind of guilt that you'd feel. So then you're going to try to get away from that. Conscience is making you feel guilty. Oh my God, I got to get away from it. Find somebody that we'll get together and we'll like birds of a feather flock together. We'll have a pride march. Abortion pride. What we did was noble. The world, there's too many people in the world anyway, is one of the rationalizations. They're better off dead than being miserable. Because if they were raised, then they'd be miserable, and so they're just happier dead somehow, which is insane. once you start down the path towards seeing right as wrong and wrong as right, then before you know it, you see the world backwards. You're seeing it in an inversion, and then right becomes a threat because it's threatening to upend the false reality that you've created. So that line between right and wrong is in every single one of us, and that's what we have to be willing to admit. That's what we have to be willing to see. That's what we have to be willing to face. And it's really easy to convince yourself that that I'm not a part. It's somebody else's problem. Somebody else caused this to happen. I did this and I did that, and I'm a good person, and so therefore, it wasn't me that did it. And maybe it wasn't you that did it, but it is still necessary for us to look at ourselves. It's easy to find fault in other people. We got to be willing to look at ourselves and constantly examine our own motives. And that's where the peace that passes all understanding is to be found. Is if you can really constantly look at your own motivation and not be enemies with your conscience ever, if you can manage that, then a peace, kind of a peace of mind, and the words sort of fail at this point, but there's a peace of mind that just kind of passes all understanding. So then, it's possible to sort of look out in the world, and the world's troubled, and there's all this stuff going on, and it seems to be getting worse. But at the same time, it's as if I'm in an alternate universe, and where things are just absolutely peaceful, and I'm not troubled. Now, of course, maybe you can say I'm living in a bubble. And that might be the case. But at the same time, it's a whole lot, in this bubble that I'm in, if you want to call it that, is a whole lot more peaceful than I can't imagine the turmoil that people are going through. And the anxiety that they're feeling, because I have zero anxiety when it comes to this stuff. So anyway, let's go back to Joel.
Ever since 2020, there's a one thing that I probably won't do for my work family is if they ever said that I had to move to Virginia to keep my job, I would go looking for another job probably. They're not going to do that. They value people. There's no, there's a lot of companies now that are literally, I have a friend, in fact, that forces him to go into work 3 days a week. And when you look at a pecking order of what's important in your life, and work isn't nearly as important as either my family or my church family. So while I do enjoy their company and just being around them like it was last week, they are nowhere near as important in my life as my family or my church family or even friends like you. And there's a concept called an ERG, or Employee Resource Group, And I know you've kind of talked about this before, but you talk about like how important some of this stuff is. You know, Ben Shapiro. I listen to him. He says one of the biggest problems in the world today is the fact that people don't go to church anymore, and I think that's true. You know, there was a time where people just went to church because I guess some felt like they had to go. You know, but I think that might be how you feel when you're young. Probably how I felt when I was young, but now I feel quite the opposite. Not I have to go to church, I get to go to church. And I love doing it. And I love going there, and I love serving other people.
Let me interrupt once again. What you need to do, and that's part of it, is to, you surround yourself with like-minded people. And so part of this, and an important part of conscience, of kind of wrestling with conscience, a very important part of it is you're kind of bouncing off of other people. And this is, from a technical standpoint, this, having other people around as part of, the group that we're part of, having other people around really does help us maintain our sanity, because if it's been shown that if we're isolated for any long period of time, we tend to go crazy. We tend to lose we lose touch with reality. So it really is necessary to have a group of people. And you can kind of be selective about it, but have a group of people that you're kind of part of the group. And hopefully it's you're selecting your friends kind of based on it's, in large part, it's going to be, if you're genuine, and I can only, I'm kind of going by my own experience, but I tend to be, you think, you hear me talk in this podcast. Well, when I'm dealing with people, if I have any, much of a conversation at all with people, this same exact subject matter just pops right out, and I'll have like a genuine conversation with people. Some people are really find that to be kind of an attractive thing, and then there's other people that there's maybe sort of repelled by it. So I tend to end up with friends that I can have these sort of conversations with. And that's actually quite useful. It's useful for me, certainly. And it's useful, hopefully it's useful for them to have those sorts of conversations as well. And that's been, one of the big benefits of, one of the reasons I've continued with this podcast for so long, is because it has enabled me to kind of talk about these things in a way that really, it would actually have been impossible otherwise. But our society, our communities, in large part, have kind of been disrupted, and they've been, there's just so many different things that can serve as distractions. And then you've had the problem of, this didn't all just happen in a vacuum, and it didn't happen overnight. society has never been perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect society. There's no such thing as perfect communities. And so, but it, back in the, I think really our current problems kind of date back at least to the 1950s. World War II, world's greatest generation, saved the world, and they came back and they failed to transmit their value system to their children. And so then there's been, several generations since then, and it's just kind of gone downhill. And it's not, it may not even be the majority. Let's say it's just 1/3. Let's say it's 1/3 of the kids that, that came after the World War II generation. Let's say 1/3 of them didn't integrate into the community very well, and the evidence of it's the 1960s and all of the ridiculous stuff that went on. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. It's kind of like the population, the demographic problem. People think, well, there's too many people in the world and the world population is still expanding, which is true. And it will continue to expand for some, probably some period of time, maybe like 2050, at least before it starts actually going down. But in a lot of Western countries, what has happened is that there are 2/3 of the people, even in Japan, which Japan's been leading the way with this, kind of a demographic collapse. Even in Japan, 2/3 of the people are having just as many kids as they did that they always did. So you have, families of 4 kids or 3 kids, 2 kids, whatever. So that's very common. But 1/3, the thing that's happened, and this has happened kind of worldwide in different societies at different times, but it started. But 1/3 of the people didn't have any kids, and that would include me. I was part of this so-called baby boom generation, which I like to call the baby doom generation with a D. But 1/3 of the baby boom generation just didn't have kids, which that actually includes me in that. I had no kids. So you have one generation, 1/3 of them don't have any kids, and then the next generation comes along and 1/3 of them don't have kids, and so on and so forth. And so you can see how the population of kids just keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And in the meantime, you've got all these old people that are kind of causing the population pyramid to swell at the top. And who's going to support all those old buggers? So it's gotten to be a big problem. Japan sort of led the way, because back in the late 70s, everyone thought that Japan was this big juggernaut, and it was just going to take over the world. There was even this song, I Think I'm Turning Japanese. You can look it up if you've never heard it. But it was a hit song they played on the radio, I Think I'm Turning Japanese. Well, what ended up happening? The demographic cliff. Japan all of a sudden they just sort of fizzled out to a large extent. They didn't take over the world. They weren't a big juggernaut. After all, they had a demographic problem. You can't simply clone the next generation of, like if you don't have enough 18-year-olds to go to work in your factories and start raising you can't simply start cloning them. They already have to be there. They started out 18 years before. So anyway, let's go back to listening to Joel.
But when it comes down to it, an employee resource group doesn't hold a candle to my church small group, my church, or any of that stuff. Any of the stuff that companies try to do to build teams and stuff like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're good. They were good activities. We had team building activity at George Mason University, and it was really good. But I don't value it near as much as I value other things in my life. I think that's, I used to say when I was younger, when I was working for the college, that it felt like family working there. I was wrong. It doesn't. Yeah, it's nice to be around those people, but when you leave and nobody there really bothers to reach out to you and talk to you, there are certain people that I work with there that I do that with still to this day. But a work relationship has no, you spend a lot of time at work. So it's important to get along with your friends at work. But when you leave that company, will those friends actually talk to you afterwards? That's important. And if they don't, then don't feel too bad like when you leave, and they don't reach back out to you, So, but that's why, like, there's certain people like you, and I have other folks that I've met online that I will do that with regularly. I'll send them a Voxer, send them an email, but I can't always be around them. But my church people, my church family, I see them sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. My family, I see every day, all right? Sometimes I'll go through days where I only talk to my boss in the morning. Today was kind of one of those days. So, but when you see some people that are pushing for more of what we went through in 2020 and 2021, no thank you. Take care, brother.
Okay, well, thank you again, Joel. So, yeah, it's really important to have people, and like I say, it's useful to have, kind of things that are shared in common. And some of those, they don't necessarily have to be really deep philosophical things necessarily. They can be more, kind of more shallow things. But I think, at least in my experience, really the best ones are sort of deep philosophical things. It's been my experience that those sorts of people, where I can have really meaty philosophical conversations with people, those kind of people make the best friends. And it's sort of a self-selecting process. So that, like I say, so if someone if they're put off by that, then they're probably not, they're not going to have anything to do with me, Excuse me. And at the same time, if they're, someone's kind of interested in something that sort of puts me off, then I'm not likely not to pursue any kind of a friendship with them. And then the other thing with friendship, it sort of takes two to tango. So you both have to have some interaction with, it can't all be one-sided. So both of you have to kind of be engaged together. And that, it's not easy finding and cultivating those sort of friendships, but at the same time, I think it's easier than some people give it credit for, because there are places where you can find people, and and a church, obviously could be a good place for that. So, but there are opportunities to you don't have to just be lonely or whatever. There are plenty of opportunities out there if you know where to find them. And again, it sort of has to be based around your own, something that you would kind of naturally do, It's got to be kind of based around your own mindset, your own behavior, etc. So, anyway, how long have we been recording? Does this tell me somewhere where I've been going? Because this has all been one big long live. Oh yeah, we've been going for an hour and 15 minutes. So, I've been recording this on this OBS studio, so it is going to be put up on YouTube. Feel sorry for whoever's watching it, but, whatever. But I will, it does, it is easy for me to just split this off then and, make an MP3 file out of it and then put it up as a podcast. But the advantage of doing it with this OBS studio is the fact that I've got the setup is already here, and in my little office room, the setup's already here, and with the computer and the microphone and everything. So I don't have to go out to the truck and bring in the microphone and the other stuff, because there's been plenty of, over the years I've had to do that. When I recorded a podcast at home, I'd have to go out and get the stuff and then bring it in. And then when I was done, make sure I took it all back out to the truck. And so with this setup, I don't have to do that. It's just all right here. And all I have to do is basically turn the computer on, make sure it's updated, because there's always updates. Every month there's new updates, and so make sure it's all updated, and then maybe reboot it once or twice for the updates, and then do the recording, and works pretty well. So anyhow, hope everyone is having a great weekend. Hope you have a great week coming up, and I will catch you later.
Remember, Trucker Tom is like Visa. He's everywhere you want to be.
Product reviews, restaurant reviews, photos, opinions, and more. Visit Trucker Tom's website at www.truckerphoto.com. You've been listening to Trucker Tom's podcast, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. All you have to do is send us an email to tom@truckerphoto.com.